Hi, everyone. Thanks for joining. We're going to get started in the next few minutes or so. Just going to give it a couple minutes for people to trickle in. We're starting to slow down a little bit. Okay, I think we can get started. Okay, once again, thank you so much for joining us for our session, Making Data-Driven Decisions with GA4. My name is Jenna Danaev, and I am a senior specialist on the paid search team here at Carnegie, and I'll be the host for today's session. Before we get started, I wanted to share a few quick housekeeping items. So this session will be recorded, and we will be providing links to the recordings to all attendees by the end of next week. While the video streaming window you're currently viewing offers both Whova and Zoom functionality, we do ask that you please use that Zoom chat and Q&A. This will allow our presenters and support teams to more efficiently respond to your questions. And at the end of the session, we will answer as many questions as time allows. If you have any questions or if you need help during the session, you can email the team using conferences@carnegiehighered.com or message us in Whova through the Ask Organizers Anything section of the community board. With that, I'm excited to introduce Elizabeth Glass, who is the director of the Google Analytics team here at Carnegie.
Hello, everyone. Thanks so much for taking the time to join our session today. Really excited to talk about GA4 with you. We have a lot of information to cover and really want to work with you to help you get started getting GA4 up and running. If you already have it running, let's figure out how to get everything to get some insights out of it. So my name is Elizabeth Glass. I'm the director of Google Analytics, and my archetype persona is the industrious and investigative researcher. And I like to look for data-driven decisions. My background is in marketing with higher ed and e-commerce. So today's agenda in our GA4 session, first we're going to talk about organizing, developing a measurement plan and getting that foundation set in your GA4. And then we're going to look at taking action, looking at some tips for creating GA4 events and GTM. And then measuring, we're going to look for insights from GA4. Where do we look? What reports do we look in? What are we even looking for? So let's dive in. And as mentioned, if you have any questions, please put them in the Zoom chat. If we can get to them at the end, we'd be happy to. All right, so let's talk about a foundation. We want to develop a measurement plan. So we want to look through the website and find out what determines what behaviors are going on the website that you want users to do, that you want to track. We want to ensure accurate data tracking. Then we want to create a plan, and we want to organize that list. It's very important to get this foundation down so that when you get to the reports, you know that the data you're looking at is accurate. So before you configure GA4 event tracking, you do want to go into GA4 and check the settings and make sure everything is checking accurately as you expect. You do want to ensure that Google Tag Manager and Google Analytics GA4 tagging is set up correctly. So making sure that that Google tag is in there, that it's selecting as expected to the property as expected. There are some data settings that you want to look at in GA4 to make sure that they are set up correctly. And then you can optimize report settings to be able to see the custom dimensions you want to see or to see the settings that you need to see. There's a lot of details that go into a GA4 audit. So we have a link in here for you of how to set up GA4 that goes down and breaks down a list of things that you can look for and different settings that you can look at to make sure that your GA4 is set up correctly. So let's talk about event tracking. GA4 does have it set up that through enhanced measurements, they are collecting some basic events. If you toggle these on, I'll mention that as for sure, because you do have the option to turn these off. So if you wanted to set up a custom event instead of the standard event, you could toggle it off. So for example, page views is going to be collected of how many pages are viewed and what page is it. You can toggle on for scroll. where you're going to get 90% of scroll down the page. View search results event as the site search. So this is where users are searching on your site. What are they looking for? As long as you have it configured for your query parameter. Video engagement through video start, progress and complete, file download, form interactions, form start, form submit, and clicks. But just to mention, the clicks are just to external sites, not necessarily internal sites. GA4 is also collecting acquisition dimensions and engagement metrics, so such as active users, new users, sessions. So they're already getting a lot of information at the basics. But there's more than that. Across your website, users are doing so many more behaviors that you want to make sure that you know what's going on so that you can really optimize your website. So our recommendation is to create a plan. So the first thing you want to do is really organize your plan, organize a list, create a spreadsheet. And in your spreadsheet, what you want to do is set up all the tags that you want to create. So you'll list your tag name, and we do recommend that you create a standard naming convention. So all your tags, for example, would have GA4 clicks to common app. So that you know just by at a glance with your tag what it's going to do and where the data is going to go. You want to include your event name. Keep in mind that there's a 40-character limit. It is lowercase with no spaces and no special characters. You can make it a longer event name, but when it comes into GA4, it'll chop it back to 40 characters. So for example, with a common app click, you might want to do common underscore app underscore click. The great thing about GTM is you can add extra parameters. So let's say we're tracking that common app click. You can add in what page was it clicked on? What is the link that it's going to? You can get that extra information that you want to get on that tag so that when you see that data in GA4, you can have everything that you want to have right there. And then also include a trigger overview. Where do you want this to fire? Is it particular pages? Is it a particular button? Is it a particular class of button? So you can add into your spreadsheet all the details that you want. That way, you're organizing before you get started, and you're not just creating tags and hoping for the best. Make sure that you have a good plan. So we talked about the standard events with the enhanced measurements. So now let's just talk about some ideas for custom events. The only way you'd want to track a custom event is if it's not already one of those standard events. So let's talk about custom scroll tracking. So 90% scroll is helpful to see when users get to the bottom of that page, but you may want to set up a custom scroll tracking if you want to find out when they hit 25% or 50% or 75%, but you wouldn't need to do 90% again if you're already tracking the 90. Or you could turn off the standard event and only do your custom scroll tracking and get 25, 50, and 75. So that's just an example of how you'd want to do a standard event versus a custom event. Another thing you might want to track is campus visits. So you might have a virtual visit that isn't necessarily tracked except for just a page view, but you want to get more information out of it. So you could set up a custom tag. Program interactions. So you might have special filters on your pages. On that program page where you want to know what they're searching for, you want to know what dropdown they click. What are your users looking for the most? Are they actually clicking to go to the pages, or are they just using the filters and looking at the information? So tracking those user behaviors are really going to help you see what users are looking for on the program pages. Then we're going to look at requests for information forms. So are they filling out the form that's on the program page? Do they have to click to a different page to fill out that form? You want to make sure that you're tracking all those RFI forms across the whole site, just so you can help see that user journey. Also make sure that you're including landing page RFI forms in addition to just the regular RFI forms. You can also do clicks to third-party applications like we mentioned the Common App. So obviously you can't track within the Common App site, but you can track clicks to it. So that would be one way to set up to track people's interest in filling out the application. Depending on what platform you have, you could possibly track account creation and then application submission. So you can see where users go on that journey to get to the application. All right, so now you have your plan laid out. You've got your spreadsheet all ready with all the things you want to track across your website. Now it's time to take action. So here are some tips for you for setting up your events in GTM. We're going to talk a little bit about tag organization, creating GA4 event tags, event configurations, and data layer parameters. All right, so the first thing we want to mention when you go into GTM, really important to keep your containers organized. So you want to make sure that your GTM container is set up under a high-level email, such as a marketing or Marcom email, rather than a particular person's account. And then you can go in and add users. So add your users for everyone that needs access to it, and periodically go back and check to verify who has access to what information, just to make sure it's a clean and organized account. Then you can create a container for the website to house all of your tags. And then you can put tags, let's say just your GA4 tags, in a GA4 folder. That way, every time you need to see all the GA4 tags, you can make sure that you see them in that one folder and you can easily get to them. All right, so now you have your folder ready and you can start creating tags. So you want to look at your spreadsheet and start with getting your title and coming over and naming your title here. You do want to make sure that you have a Google tag to send all your events to GA4. And then when you have your GA4 tags, make sure that you're using that tag configuration for the GA4 events. I do recommend setting a variable. It's a constant with the GA4 property measurement ID. That way, every time you create a tag, you're not having to copy and paste that measurement ID or type it in even, but you can just use that variable in there, and then you'll make sure it all goes to the right property. Use your spreadsheet for the tag name and event name, and then start adding the parameters that you want to bring in. Do you want to send over the tag name? Do you want to send a click text, a click URL, a page title? Any extra information that you want to go with that event, this is where you need to add it to make sure that it comes in. And you can use variables that are built in, or you may want to set up a new variable and have some custom variables to get extra information. And then you want to set your trigger. Where is this event going to fire? So we talked about our Common App click. Is it going to track only on the Apply Now page, or do you want it to track across the entire site every time somebody tracks or somebody clicks on that Common App link? So just deciding how you want it to track is important so you can set that trigger. And you can set more than one trigger per event. You could have it fire on the application page and on the home page. You can have it set however many triggers you need there. Make sure you save your tag. It doesn't autosave. And then make sure you test your tag. So once it's saved, you can go into preview mode and you can test the tag to make sure it's firing on that click on that page that you needed it to fire on. So once you get your tag set up in GTM, you're not done yet. Still have a little bit more. So you still need to go over to GA4. As we mentioned, testing that preview mode, while you're doing that, you can open the debug mode over in GA4, and you can see how those events are coming into GA4. You can ensure that they're only firing one time, no duplicates. You can ensure that they're firing on the click that you intend and what page you intend. Then once you have your event set up, you want to mark important events as key events. Now, for our feature here of what we're looking at getting those insights, this is the really important part. So you want to make sure that when you set up an event, if it's not coming into the account yet, that you would go into the key event section. So let's say you want the checks to Common App click and you want application submissions and you want RFIs to be marked as a key event. You can come in here and click that blue box in the top right corner, and you can go ahead and manually add that key event. So let's add our RFI submissions. We would add our application submissions, anything that you find super important on your website. Another alternative is if you already have the events coming in, you can go to the events tab and you can go ahead and just toggle that little button to turn them into key events. Another useful feature here is adding custom dimensions. So those parameters we talked about in GTM, let's say page view, we want to know where people were when they clicked on that Common App. You want to go ahead and add that page title into your custom dimensions. By adding it in GTM, then you'll be able to see it in your standard reports, be able to get more data. And just to mention, all of those parameters are being collected. By default, when you put them in the tags, they're coming in, they're getting collected, but you can't necessarily see them in the reports unless you add them in the custom dimensions. All right, so the next big step would be to level up your events with data layer parameters. So you can track, let's say, the application submissions, and in your HTML, there are data layers that you can add in there to get what program level. And so you would know if someone that applied that put that program of bachelor's, it would come in on the event, or say it's a master's, to be able to differentiate those application submissions. Have a link here for you if you want to dig in a little bit more to data layers and see how that works. It just really adds a lot more in your reporting to be able to tell what application came in. So getting a little ahead, this is how it could be useful in a GA4 report. So we're looking at a custom data layer here where we have our session source of Google CPC. We want to know what applications came in. So now when we add that custom dimension in there, we can show the application program. So now we know that social work came in under CPC. We got 24 of those events in here. So it really just gives that extra breakdown when you're looking at the application submissions.
Coming in for a quick time check. Doing great, Elizabeth. We are only about 15 minutes in, so we have just under 30 left.
Great. All right, so let's take a look at the good stuff. So now we have our foundation. Very important to have your audit done so your property is collecting correctly. Important to get those events set up correctly, coming in through GTM into GA4. Very important to mark your key events. So everything that you find very important, such as application submissions, RFIs. And now we want to know, where can we find that data? What reports do we need to look in? What are we looking for? So we want to find campaign dimensions and metrics. We're going to look in some standard reports and some explorations. Really the big part that you want to come into your GA4 property is with the questions. What question you have is going to determine where you want to look and what you want to look for. So we want to look at the user journey, and we want to look at acquisition to events. How did they get there? What actions did they take to get to the particular events that we already set up? So looking at some of the acquisition dimensions, very important would be session source and medium, session campaign, and then session for session scope acquisition. If you are using UTM tagging, you could use session manual source, session manual medium, and session manual campaign name. Those would give you the manual tagging that you put on your pages. For some of the engagement metrics, we want to look at engagement rate and session key event rate and average engagement time and event count if you're looking at a particular event. So now, where do we find this campaign data? Important reports that are really helpful are the traffic acquisition, landing page, and events. And then we can see some data in the standard reports, but if you want to see more, in most all of the standard reports, there's this section at the top right corner where you can see the little button that sends it to an exploration. This is a great new feature from Google. What it's going to do is take all those dimensions and metrics that you're already looking at and send them into an exploration so that you can add more and not have to set it up from scratch. All right, so let's jump into some reports. So looking at our traffic acquisition report, on the left side, you'll see in the menu where there is the reports, lifecycle acquisition, and then we're going to look at traffic acquisition. So this is going to look at all the traffic coming into the site. Where did the user come from? And as we mentioned, the session source, medium, campaign, and session primary channel group. And then we want to locate the campaigns that are driving the most sessions. Highest engagement rate, high average engagement time per session, and that session key event rate. And this is where it's coming in very handy that we mark those events as key events. So now we know what pages are going to be driving that session key event rate. You do have the option to add an event name. So as we talked about that RFI event, you can see what landing pages go to that event. So let's take a look into that traffic acquisition report. So these look kind of scary at first because there's a whole lot of numbers here, but let's break it down. And let's take a look at what numbers do we want to look at and what's useful and how do we get our information out of this. So this is looking at a high level. So we're looking at our session primary channel group. You can see in that top left corner, there is the drop down if you wanted to change that to drill down a little bit more. Let's start with the channel group. So we're looking at organic search, direct, referral, and paid search on this one. We also set our date range on this one. So we're looking at the month of January compared to the previous year. So a few things we can tell from this report, looking at the organic search drives 63% of the traffic. The paid search is driving 3% of the traffic. And then we look at these numbers of the engaged session, engagement rate, and average engagement time per session. So how do we know that's good or not? What are we even looking at? So a couple options here. We can look at it compared to the site average. So if you see across the top, our site average engagement rate is 58%, where the organic search is 64%. So it's actually performing better than the site average. And then we can look down at our paid search, which is 87%, which is performing even better than our site average. So our paid search traffic is good so far. And then average engagement time per session is 56 per seconds on average. Organic search is performing better and paid search is performing about average. So you can just see a comparison of how they're going compared to the overall website. Also on the right side, you can see the key events. So we can look at how many key events are coming in by each source. So we have 63% of the traffic is driving through organic search, and then 7% through the paid search. Another thing we can see in this report is we have this year compared to last year. So we can see that organic search engaged sessions have increased 13%, engagement rate has increased 9%, and average engagement time per session has gone down a little bit by 1.62%, but not a huge difference. So it's performing pretty well. On the top right corner over here, we have, this is your drop-down options for the session primary channel group. Options that you could pull in this traffic acquisition if you want to dig into channel group, session source medium, just medium or source platform or campaign. And those are the by default ones if you wanted to dive into that. All right, so let's look a little bit deeper in this traffic acquisition. Because really our question that we're going to come with is we want to look into our session campaigns. Are the individual campaigns performing better than the generic campaign? Or which direction should we take? So we can look at this for the session source medium. So we can see that it's the Google CPC traffic. And then we're looking at the session campaign. So we're going to look at the general UG compared to the program specific UG. So looking at the percentage of sessions, the generic one is running 35% of the traffic here, whereas the others are 10%, 9%, 6%, 5% to the campaign specific. Then we can look at the engagement rate. So looking at 23% for the generic UG. And then when we look at the program specific UG, it's 65% and 64%. So we can see that that traffic that's looking for a particular program is becoming more engaged with the site. We can also look at the average engagement time per session. So the average is 44 seconds. And then we look at program specific, and they're actually taking a little bit more time on the page. So we're looking at 56, 59, 49, 54 seconds. So they're spending a little bit more time. And then we can look at those key events. So this is where it's important to make sure we have those RFI events set up on our landing page so we can really see where the users are filling out those forms. So we have our key events, and then we have our session key event rate, where the generic of the UG campaign is at 90.96%, but the program specific are actually running a little higher at 1.37. The one is 0.58, but the others are 1.07 and 1.17. So in this case, I would say the program specific campaigns are actually running a slightly higher session key event rate than the generic UG campaign. All right, so now let's look at a landing page. So we talked about what source they come from, but where did they start on the page? So we want to look in reports, lifecycle, engagement to landing page. And just to mention, your library might look slightly different if it has been customized or some of the reports have been changed. But generally, this is where Google keeps the default for the landing page information. So the purpose of this landing page report is to talk about the first page that the user lands on. And this is going to give you the metrics for the entire session. Now you'll see the one above it is pages and screens. So that is slightly different, and the pages and screens is going to give you the metrics that happened on that page, where a landing page is going to give you the metrics that happened during the session when they started on that page. So if you want to know where they filled out an RFI form, what page it's on, you might want to go to that pages and screens. But if you want to know where they start on the website to fill out RFI forms, then you'd want to go to landing page so that you can get that entire session. This is a really great place to go to locate pages that drive the most users to key events. All right, so let's take a look in this landing page report. So this particular one, we looked at the landing page, and then we went ahead and added that second dimension of event name. And then you can see at the top where we did a search for RFI submissions. So we can look at just the RFI submissions that happened during the sessions when they started on that landing page. So in this one, we have our generic RFI form is on the /register/RFI page. We can see that we had 39 sessions on there, but we can see that the most key events happen when users start on the home page and then they get to an RFI submission. So the data that we could take away from this one when we jump in here is we can see that the RFI submissions are filled out when they start on the homepage, nursing page, or directly on that RFI page. We have some other programs included here. So we've got the BSN, Masters in Nursing, programs page, psychology page. But say we have other programs that we really expected to be higher on this list, but they're not here. This would be a really good opportunity to go to those pages and say, okay, well, we have this other program that's not getting RFI submissions. Maybe we need to take that CTA and move it higher on the page. Or is the user required to click off the page to go fill out an RFI form and they're not clicking off? So we want to make sure that those links are more obvious, or even take that RFI form and put it on the page, the program page, so that users would be able to come in, read the information, and fill out the form right there. And they might be more likely to fill it out if they don't have to leave the page. So it's a few optimization opportunities if you look at the data and just see what's happening or what's not happening, and figure out where you want to optimize. All right, so another great report we want to look at is attribution path. So this is in the advertising section. You'll see the attribution and then attribution paths. The purpose of this one is you really want to find out how paid channels are working in combination with organic and owned ones. And so this is going to look at the touch points that it takes for a user to complete key events. Once again, that's the really important part about having those key events marked, because this isn't going to mark just regular events. This is only going to take into account those key events. So it's going to look at the touch points of different channels and how many times it takes. Does it take one email? Does it take 5 emails? Is it just organic search? What's bringing users to complete these key events on the site? All right, so taking a peek into this report, at the top, you'll see with the attribution paths, you can look at key events by primary channel group is what it starts as. But then there's a drop down there that you can select how you want to look at this information with source or medium or campaign. And then it's by default choosing data driven, which is the way that Google generally tracks the traffic in GA4. But there's a drop down there if you wanted to change it to last click, Google paid channels, however you want to sort this data if you wanted to see it in a different way. So once you have those settings set up the way you want to see them, then this is an example of the chart at the bottom. So in this particular example, we have email at the top. But it took 2 times of users getting that email to complete these 57 key events. And then we have paid search, organic search, unassigned. We all don't love unassigned, but usually what unassigned is a new word for basically saying not set, which is Google doesn't know where this user came from. They don't have a referral page. They didn't come from UTM codes. They didn't come out of organic search. So it's Google's way of saying, not sure where they came from, but this traffic came. So they credit the account on this one, or the traffic on this one, for organic search at 22% and unassigned at 78%. And those users completed 27 key events. So this gives you an overall high-level view of what it's taking. So my takeaway from this would be to look at that email to say it's going to take more than one email to get users to complete a key event. So if you want them to fill out that RFI form, you're looking for them to create an account, or you're looking for them to submit the application, sending one email might not do it. In this particular case, they may need multiple emails to get that click to be able to get in and do the behavior that you want them to do. All right, so we mentioned a little bit about explorations. We did say that you could take one of those standard reports and click in the top right corner and send it to an exploration. That's an option. Or you can come in and create a whole new exploration. So the question is why? Why would you want to create an exploration? This is a really great place to come in and add more. So we talked about you can have 2 dimensions and you can see the metrics. You can even customize some of the metrics in standard reports. But if you want more than that, this is a great place to come in and add multiple dimensions, multiple metrics, and be able to control what you want to see. Another reason you'd want to do this is if you want to have extra reports in one place. So say you wanted a freeform and a page path and a funnel exploration all together in one place. You can put multiple tabs in there and have them all in one report. Say you want to come back and look at this every month. You want to send it to someone else every month. This is a good place to come back and have everything already set of what you need. And then you can go in and come back every month and it's just set. You don't have to do it again. So I did want to call out a few things on the exploration page. When you are in your standard reports and you make changes, if you save it for everyone. But if you come in this exploration and you create an exploration, by default, it's yours. You are the user that can see it and use it. But you do have the option, and in the screenshot, you can see on the right side, if you click those 3 dots, that you can share it. So when you share it, you can share it with everyone that can see the property so that they can come in and also use this exploration. Also with a couple other options here, you could duplicate it. You can rename it, anything that you need to do in here as a high level. Explorations also give you an option to analyze traffic a little more. So we can set up segments. Let's dig into the exploration. I'll show you a little more. So this is just a sample of a freeform exploration. What we've done is set up our rows with our session source and medium, as we mentioned. But we also went in here and added some segments. So by default, you might have US, direct traffic, paid traffic, mobile traffic, tablet traffic. But if those aren't really what you need, you can delete those. And then we come in and we created the program search users. So these are users that have been to a program page and are just looking for information. We can set up local users, who's in our area or who's in another particular area we're considering targeting. Are the engagement good in that area or not so much? So this is a really good way to segment those users that you want to find out more about the data of what's going on. So in this one, we have our local users and we have our program search users. We added our metrics that we want to look at with engagement rate, session key event rate. So now we can look at it and see our local users engagement rate average is 35%. So we can look at that CPC traffic and organic traffic and see that organic is actually performing better than the site average. CPC is a little bit low at 28%. And the session key event rate is 1%. And then we can look at the program search users. So this is people that are looking at any program and taking a little more interest in just the home page. So their average engagement rate is 97%. They're becoming more engaged and they're much more likely to fill out the RFI form. So another good reason to get those CTAs for the RFI form, the visit clicks, and all that on the program pages is users that are looking at that program page are more likely to complete a key event. All right, another report option that we have is creating a funnel exploration. And you can create this adding a tab in your last report we were looking at, or you can create a new one and have a blank or a funnel exploration. And why would you want to do a funnel exploration? So what's different about this? This is a really good visual for looking at the user journey. So we set up our events of what we expect our users to do, but now you can come in and create this funnel and really get that visualization of did they start where you expected them to? And did they fill out the RFI or even view the RFI page? Did they view the visit page? Did they view the application page? And where are they dropping off in that funnel? So this is going to help us see, do we need to add more CTAs to get them to that next step? What can we do to help them move through that funnel, or are they moving as we expect? All right, so here's an example of a funnel report. The way we set this up is our expected user journey of page views. And as I mentioned, you can set it up with the expected events that you set up to track RFI completions, visit form completions, application, setting up an account, or application submissions. However you want to set this up, the explorations are great because they really let you go in and customize each step to be able to track what you want. So in this example here, we have our program page views, which we have a little over 80,000 during the set time period that looked at the program pages. Then the RFI pages, we can see there's a pretty big drop. So the abandonment rate of each step here tells us that the users didn't step from those program pages to the RFI pages. So good opportunity to find out why. What do we need to do to get the users to that next step? And then you can see that it drops even more as we get to the visit page views and then the apply page views. And this is tracking it over a period of time so that you can see in 5 days from the time they viewed that program page, did they look at the RFI or the visit page? So in this case, I would recommend that your program page, and they're supposed to move to the RFI page, we definitely want to get more CTAs on there. We want to get more opportunities for the users to be encouraged to request for information or to be encouraged to visit campus or even a virtual visit to get them to take that next step. So here's a couple of resources for you of how to set up GA4. This is that link that I mentioned, just to give you some tips for auditing your property, making sure that your metrics are being collected, making sure your settings are correct. Just get that data foundation to get the insights that you need. Leveling up your reporting. This is another opportunity to add those data layers. This gives you more information about the parameters. And of course, we are here to help. So if you guys want more information or would like some help setting up the events or some help with some insights and analysis of your reports, we'd love to help you.
Awesome. This was so great, Elizabeth. Thank you so much. We do have just under 10 minutes, maybe about 8 minutes or so left for questions, and we had a couple come through. So if you're ready, I can fire them off.
Let's try it.
Okay, great. So first one, would you recommend building tags/events in GTM over GA4?
I do. I feel like you have a lot more control and a lot more flexibility in GTM. You can build them in GA4, but it's a lot smoother and easier to add the parameters and add extra triggers if you do it in GTM. And it helps to be able to organize them in folders. So say you want to build College of Education, you could even do a GA4 College of Education folder where versus GA4, they're all together. So if you're building out a lot of tags, I definitely recommend GTM.
Thank you. All right, next question. Any suggestions on ensuring that app submissions from Slate are being tracked in GA4? We recently added UTM parameter carryover to help with this on the Slate reporting side.
Yes, you definitely can track application submissions, but you do have to set up those custom tags that we talked about. So going into GTM and setting it up for the page view for the submission to be able to find out when users submitted the application. So it's not set up by default. It is a custom tag that you do need to set up.
Okay, this next one we might have to handle offline, but I will ask just in case there's a more general answer. They said our SSO login is distorting our traffic attribution, particularly for internal users. Do you have any tips or ideas for workarounds?
So a couple thoughts on that one. So internal users, you can set up a filter and set up internal traffic so that you're able to take that internal traffic and separate it out from external traffic. I would definitely start with that as a first step. So you know what traffic you're actually looking at in your GA4 data. You can add the custom dimension for traffic type so that you can then go in there and set it. You can also set that filter in a couple different ways. I would want to make sure you set it as testing, which I know sounds like it's not a good idea, but it actually is. So testing is going to take your data and temporarily separate it out so that when you set your filter, you can see the two. If you set that filter as active, you're going to permanently take out that activity. So once you have that filter set and you have it set as testing, then you can tell the difference in your data and really see if that SSO is changing your data, how it's affecting it. And yeah, we would really have to dig into the details to see how that's affecting the acquisition, to see what it's doing for those users. So if Google can get behind that wall, if they're tracking it as expected. So that would probably have to be a dive in a little bit deeper to see what the data looks like once you have that filter set up.
All right, next question. Do you have any tips for exporting and merchandising internally large and circuitous path explorations for user journey mapping?
Yeah, so we didn't talk much about it, but in the explorations, you can export the information as a PDF. You can export it as an Excel file. Um, I guess the hard part on that one would be large amounts. How large? Once you get too large, I would say you probably want to make sure you store your data in BigQuery. Once you get the GA4 data coming over to BigQuery, there's a lot more capability you have as far as exporting data. It becomes more granular and you can take a bigger look at that data. Not to mention with BigQuery, you can keep it long term. Whereas in GA4, keeping it in the console, you are limited to what you can do in the console. So for any big exports, I would lean towards start looking into BigQuery. But as far as a page path report and an exploration, you can export that as a PDF or as an Excel.
Couple more. How much of this can you do without access to GTM?
Oh, well, that would limit you as far as where you can create the tags or events. So you would be having to create the events within GA4, which you can do, not to say you can't. So you would be able to create some basic events in there. And then we made sure that we were talking about the standard events and explorations in here. You can do all that with access to just GA4 without GTM access.
Okay, next up, can you explain the difference between accounts and containers in Google Tags?
Yes, so we are talking about GTM in that case. There is an overall account that you set up, and you can set up a container inside of it. So if you say had a web property versus a website property, you could have different containers. And they would have different GTM codes that you would be putting on your page. So if you wanted to track your site with independent GTM codes, you would have different containers. The structure of GA4 is a account, encompasses the entire thing, and then you have properties underneath it. So you could have different GA4 properties underneath the one major account. And in both cases, you can set permissions. So someone could have an account level permission or container or property permission on there.
Awesome. I think I have one last question for you. I think we have time for one more. Can we set up hidden form fields in Slate with default values so that GTM can detect these variable values and help us with reporting?
That's a great question. We'd probably need to dive into your exact situation to be able to fully answer that, but I would say we probably could do it. We just want to look at it for sure before I gave a definite yes.
So, oh, we had one more come in, and I think we can squeeze it in. Is it general best practice to have any marketing partners create a separate container in our GTM account?
You could have a separate container. Usually, I would recommend not necessarily keeping all your tags in the one container. If you wanted to limit their access to the container, you could give them a view access, or there's some basic access that you could give where they could create the tags but not publish them. And that way it would get your approval to go in and publish the tags. You could see everything that's going to be published before it was official. That's probably the way I would take it, because you don't necessarily want to have that extra tag on the site if you don't have to. Running everything out of the one GTM container is ideal.
So that is all the time we have today for questions. If we didn't get to a question or if you have any additional ones, you can post it in Whova's Q&A feature on the right side of your screen, and our presenter or a member of our workshop team will reply on that page. Thank you all for attending this session, Making Data-Driven Decisions with GA4. Elizabeth, if you head on to the next slide, we actually have a special promotion. For our digital marketing workshop attendees, we are offering 20% off 12-month conversion rate optimization packages. And you can scan the QR code on your screen now to complete the form, and our team will be in touch. You can learn more at the next and final session, From Click to Commitment, an Introduction to CRO for Higher Education, which is happening right after this at 4 p.m. Eastern. Thank you all again, and we sincerely hope you've enjoyed the conference so far and that you join us for the last session of the day as well.
Thank you, everyone. Have a great day.